Hi, Paul.
Hey, Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you, man?
Good. I understand we're going back into the archives today.
We are. We're doing a special edition. We're doing the home edition. And instead of looking at guitars, we're going to look at images from our scrapbooks. We have a bunch of historic images, a lot of interesting stories to go through.
I would be an honor to do it. I've seen some of these pictures you're going to go through, and I've never been able to speak about them, so let's go.
So, Paul, these scrapbooks are pretty old. You started doing this a really long time ago. What were you using them for back in the day?
Well, if I didn't have a scrapbook to show Carlos Santana or Neil Sean or anybody, I had no proof that I had any legitimacy. You know, what customers did I have? What guitars did I make? I only had one sample with me in a case, you know, and Carlos Santana very carefully looked through it because I want one like that one. And he pointed at a guitar that I'd made for Howard Leese. So it was very good advertising. It was, you know, this is the Al Di Meola page and the Carlos Santana page and the Neil Sean page and the Howard Leese page, and, you know.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore, but it was my way of, you know, trying to say this was just not fly by night. This is, you know, I'm a guitar maker and I got a career starting.
Right. It's kind of like your resume almost.
That's exactly was my resume. It's exactly what it was. I never thought of it that way. I brought my resume and stuck it on a table.
Well, I'm glad you did it because they were a lot of fun. Well, got them grouped into pages, and there's a couple of images per page. The first page has a couple of shots from the old shop, the Ram's Head shop.
Okay, so I don't think of it as the Ram's Head shop. I think of it as 33 West Street, but that's okay. But I guess it's the Ram's Head shop now. If you think about it, it's that building, right? So this is a bass that I made for Gary Talent. Gary Talent was the bass player and still is the bass player in Bruce Springsteen's band. And when we made it, I was proud of it. I sent it to him, but he used it for a while. He's using another bass now, a private stock that we made him. Gary's always been a good customer, a good friend. He's been very genuine with me from day one.
It's a cool shot, and I really love all the backstage passes stuck to the wall.
It was the beginning of being led into places I shouldn't be led into. But the artists were interested in playing these new guitars, and I was the only guitar maker in D.C., so I was the only guy at the shows trying to show them stuff. Had I been in L.A. or New York or something, it would have been 3 vintage guys and, you know, been a line of people. But thank God I was in D.C. Next picture is the same shop with me and Steve Hildebrand. I'm bent over working on something, and Steve's looking at the camera. And he was a real woodworker. He taught me a tremendous amount about woodworking. He was a very good friend and was great at this stuff. You can see how old the telephone is. I mean, this was back in the day, as they say, right?
Yeah.
The middle picture is of the Ram's Head, but much later, because when we were there, it said guitar shop and a little teeny white thing next to the door. But the 2 bottom pictures were taken in the room up. If you look at the roof, there's 2 windows, and the one on the upper right is the window for the picture of the room of the pictures on the bottom. The one on the bottom left is me the night I finished the first guitar for Carlos Santana. I've looked at that picture a million times. How did he know how to do the headstock shapes and the headstock angle and the neck shape and the finish and the truss rod and the fret positions and the inlays and where the pickups go and the bridge and the carving and the body shape and the neck angle and the wiring, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And I have an idea. I mean, it was done in baby steps. The first guitar was, you know, a single cutaway and then a double cutaway and then a single pickup and then a double pickup, and then eventually it was a curly maple top, and it slowly progressed. But there was some inherent understanding of it really early on. You know, I remember going to Spain, and I think that Spain is the home of the guitar in a way. And I could see that I could have had an old shop there. It was a very kind of deja vu moment. I don't have that very often. But the guitars we make now aren't that dissimilar from the guitar I'm holding there.
Yeah, that's true.
And the other one is of John Ingram and myself and Gina Lee in the same shop holding instruments. But what's interesting about Gina, other than her being a dear friend and very smart and very giving woman, is that we ran out of work. And Gina said, well, I can fix that. And I said, how are you going to do that? She goes, well, I'm going to become Loretta Stiletto, my pen name. And I'm going to write all these magazines and newspapers and tell them about my friend Paul Smith that makes the guitars. And we'll see if we can get some articles written about the shop and see if we can get some work. Great idea. So she interviews me, writes these Loretta Stiletto, my friend in Annapolis makes these guitars, you should come do an article on them, not knowing she worked in the shop. When they walked in, it was Gina Lee, right? And damn if the Sun papers in Baltimore didn't show up and a bunch of other people show up and do articles. She did a great job. That was
awesome.
Spectacular. She saved the business. Not that it was a sole proprietorship with helpers. You know, it wasn't like a big company. It was just, we were trying to make ends meet. The other thing that's interesting about that guitar John Ingram's holding is I didn't have money to pay him, so I paid him the double neck. John named that guitar Big.
That's right. I forgot that.
Named it Big.
Yep. Do you want to mention anything about your sign in that one picture?
You look in the upper right of the picture, in the bottom right, there's a bunch of names. And they were all the people we'd made guitars for. So they were our customers. It was a customer list.
All right. The next shot we have is...
I'm carving the neck on Carlos Santana's first main guitar.
Yeah.
You can see there's a spoke shave on the bench. There's a jig for doing the neck shape. And I'm carving the neck. The look on my face I find interesting.
It was a long day.
Yeah, you know... Now, I'm just focused on the side of the fretboard trying to get the curve over right. So the second picture is on the same bench. There are two guitars. The one that's closest is the second guitar for Carlos Santana. And the one that's farther away is a guitar for Bill Holter. They were made at the same time. Now, what's interesting about the picture to me is that was a kind of a bedspread that I laid on the bench to make sure that no chips dented or scratched the guitars. And when they were done, they sounded very different. And that night we switched all the parts so that the pickups went on the other one, the bridge one, they switched them completely. And when we plugged them in, they sounded the same as they had before we switched it. And we switched it back, which meant it was the guitar, not the parts. And it was the absolute proof that the guitar has a lot to do with the tone, because I switched all the parts and the guitar sounded the same, and switched them back and the guitar sounded the same, but both guitars, when plugged in one after another, sounded very different.
That's interesting.
I have reasons now why I believe that happened, having to do with the alignment of the screws in the front of the bridge and how dry the paint was and piles of other things we've learned over time. But those two guitars made a big difference. The one on the closest on the bottom was the second one, and when he held that second one, he didn't know he was holding a different guitar until he noticed it had a tone control. It felt exactly the same to him, which I thought was another very good sign that I could duplicate the work. Because he had accused me at the very beginning of the guitar being an accident of God. By the fifth guitar, it wasn't an accident anymore, which I thought was great.
So the next page, we have a handful of our early endorsers.
At the time, I didn't call them endorsers. They were customers, right? So in the top left is Gary Moore playing one of the very first customs. And he was very cool to deal with, very generous. I never got a quote from him, but it was clear that he was playing the guitars because he was doing videos and people were noticing he was playing them. Wonderful guitar player. For his solo career, played in Thin Lizzy. Powerful guitar player.
And I told you about the first time I saw a PRS ever was in the Gary Moore video for Over the Hills and Far Away.
One of his songs, not one of the Led Zeppelin tunes, right?
That's correct. And I guess I was 17 maybe, and I saw it, and I had no idea who made that guitar, but I was really curious. And then, when I was 18, I started working for you, and I figured out who it was.
All right, let's go on. The one on the upper right is Al Di Meola playing a synthesizer guitar that I had made for him. He actually let me use his name in my advertising in trade for a good cost of the guitar. Guitar player in the middle of this is Neil Sean holding a double neck that he bought from John Ingram. I didn't have the money to pay John, so we built him a double neck and I gave it to him. And it was interesting, those necks are full of graphite. They have these big square rods of graphite and there's no truss rods in there. You see there's no truss rod covers on the headstocks. And
yeah, I see that.
But that guitar was played by Jonathan Cain on the Journey tours for years. The one in the lower left is Nancy Wilson playing a guitar that we made for her, and she wanted a 3/4 size guitar. Making a 3/4 didn't work, but if you multiplied every number times 0.9, it was quite a bit shorter guitar, and that's what that was. She was another very good customer. She had ordered a guitar with a 12-string with a dragon in it with an opal eye. She was.
Oh yeah.
And Howard were great customers. It was good.
Next page, we have a very familiar face.
So the first one on top is me and Carlos Santana talking at Merriweather Post Pavilion during the Z-Bop tour, or after that. He was, and still is, a very powerful guitar player. Knows how to play to the last person in the last seat of an arena that's going into the bathroom. He's really something. What a guitar player. He knows how to play stadium guitar. That pass is from going to see him at Constitution Hall when he got the second guitar I made him, which was on the bench on the bed cover. So that night. And then what's interesting, it was 4/21, so April 21st. A lot of bands were in town that spring. And it was interesting. I would finish a guitar and then 6 bands would be in town that day. And I would be able to show it to them before I sent it to the artist. I remember once I was at Warner Theater and Lowell George, I was showing him a guitar I'd made and he goes, "Get away from me." I said, "What's wrong?" Paul Barrere was trying to help me. He goes, "Get away from me, get away from me." I said, "What's wrong, what's wrong?" He goes, "Every guitar I've ever loved's been stolen from me and I'm going to love that guitar. Get away from me." Which I thought was a great little comment, really, in a way. And Paul Barrere knelt down and gave me a stage pass, and I got to watch this band of geniuses go at it at the Warner Theater that night.
Oh, wow.
So the next picture here is Carlos Santana playing the International Colors that we put on a guitar for him. Very, very cool.
I always really like that color combo for some reason. I think it's really neat.
Beginning is of us learning how to tape off and stain things different. What private stock's doing now with colors?
It's crazy. All right, so the next page, we have some early business cards and an ad. What can you tell me about these?
So, Mark, the top one is the original card. And Les Paul had met me at Venom and Music and actually kind of interviewed the guitar, was taking the strings and pulling them off the neck to find out if every time he pulled it off it was the same note. He was trying to find out how to even the sides of the frets were, and he said, "That's really impressive." He really liked it. And he signed the card for me, and it was always good to have it in the scrapbook that Les Paul had signed one of my cards. It meant something to these, customers I was trying to earn, right?
Yeah.
But I got a check from Peter Frampton made out to Paul Luthier, and that was the end of that card. Paul Reed Smith, lute maker. Luthier was a guitar maker. So the next one is an ad that was in Guitar Player magazine, and all I did was get requests for arch tops. That was the end of that Luthier. So I changed the card to the bottom one, fine handmade guitars, and all of a sudden it was guitars, it wasn't arch tops or, Paul Luthier or whatever it was. I mean, I can see it's the same font, Paul Reed Smith Luthier on the top card, Paul Luthier. I begged the woman at the bank to cash a check. Oh, I needed the money so bad. All right, so what do we got here? We got 2 pictures. Let's talk about the bottom one first. The bottom was the very first trade show in January at Anaheim, at NAMM. There's a picture of Carlos there on the left, the original photograph that we had mounted that we got awards for, the original poster, the original logo. That logo that's on that piece of felt on the table, Dennis Voss designed.
Yes, he did. And he told me how he did it. It was crazy. It's, well, I mean, it's the way that designers used to do it with rub-on letters.
Yeah.
And he ran out of the font, I think, that he was using. So there's like a mixture of 3 different fonts in that logo.
Did a great job.
Yep.
I told him I wanted something like the MXR logo, which when you saw it and you knew what it was. You saw it and you knew what it was. I didn't want some crazy logo. And so that was the first logo. And then we had to write PRS guitars, and then we added the Paul Reed Smith on it to it. It changed 3 or 4 times. But you can see that the logo over the light in the little backdrop wasn't a logo. That was just written out, Paul Reed Smith guitars.
Yep.
Early on stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the original guitars. And, you know, there was an amp there that we had people play through, and we'd bring them in and show them the guitars, and we were trying to get orders. And everybody would say, why do we don't need another guitar line. We don't need this. There's too many guitar lines. And they play the guitar and they go, maybe this is good. Maybe we do need another guitar line.
I love the Bud Davis stripe guitar.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Bud was doing a lot of that custom, you know, motorcycle gas tank painting for us, you know, on the guitars.
Yeah. Ted Nugent used a few of those, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
All right. The next shot we have is a couple of rough looking characters outside of the Virginia Street or Virginia Avenue shop.
So you've got Michael Dealey, Larry Melton, John Ingram, myself, David Witt, and Jeff Loma. There were some of the very original people that worked at PRS. You can see that logo's on the door, right? But we were a motley crew. We did good. We did well. You were there not that much longer after that, right?
It was not too long after that, for sure. So it's July of 1988. So 2.5 years.
So there's another shot with a whole bunch of us, right? Why don't you go to that?
Okay. Yep. That was a little bit later, right? Or
there you go. So there's the same group of people with some extras, right?
Yep.
Butler, Jeff Jacobson, and Chris Bavaria. A whole bunch of us. PT.
Yep. Mike Files.
I think that Barbara took the picture. So here's a shot of the early shop with all the metal jigs and fixtures laying on tables, right?
Now that was the wood shop at Virginia Avenue?
Wood shop at Virginia Avenue.
It was so different looking when I started. There was like a dividing wall down there.
No.
Standing benches on either side.
We had put the neck area in and made it a straight line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. So there's the one on the right is a machine for rounding fretboards, right? And the next one over to the left is for putting the truss rod slot in. Hey, look, it's Jack. Jack's one of the 3 people in charge of the company. Worked from that position up. He's doing all the SE guitars. He's deeply involved in everything. Look at Jack. That's amazing.
All right. We have just one more image to talk about today.
So that's Ted McCarty visiting the factory the first time. He couldn't see very well. He had a dislocated retina, and it was early on, and they had tried to put it back on with lasers, but he had the laser. They had it too hot, and it was too bright, and it had not done its job. So the reason his hand's on the guitar is he was melding him feeling it in the middle and then his peripheral vision on the outside. And we gave him a Les Paul that day. He said he didn't own an old Les Paul, so we gave him one. It wasn't a dry eye in the house when we did it. We had gotten it. Doug Chandler had gotten it from
Pete Townsend, right?
Yeah, it was a early Les Paul SG. And Ted said he didn't have an old Les Paul, and you know, when he died, there was one in his basement. We just didn't think it was spiritually right that he didn't have one of the things that he'd made, so we gave him one.
Yeah, that's awesome. He was a cool guy.
It was very cool. So, look, this archives thing, these are stories I haven't told. A lot of stories I have, a lot of stories I haven't. It's all kind of interesting. You know, I think we like guitars. I'm holding one I like very, very much. You like guitars.
Sure do.
here helping with the filming of this likes guitars. And there's something about it that we enjoy that doesn't get boring. There's something nice about guitars and the fact that there's a history here of making them, and you're basically dipping into this stuff. You know, I really like to hold Ted McCarty's guitars or Leo Fender's guitars or these old guitars because everything they thought that day is in that instrument, you know, and
right.
in a way, what I thought during these periods of time that you're showing is that's what I thought those days, right? You know, that's how we thought final assembly should be. That's how we thought the jigs and fixtures should be. That's how we thought it's the best we had to work with. And I don't remember ever resenting anything. It was always kind of magic. And I appreciate the opportunity to go through all this stuff. What you guys are seeing behind my head is the ceiling of my recording studio. I have a man cave that a lot of our artists come here and record, which I enjoy doing. Most recently, Bosco's been here and Magnolia Boulevard's been here. You know, Martin Simpson came here and recorded a record. Tony McManus has recorded here. There's been a lot of artists record here. And I enjoy doing that for artists. It's a tool to capture music. That's what a recording studio is. And it's a different art form than making guitars, but it's also kind of tied together. Recently, there's a piece of gear here that has always sounded really good, and I was able to incorporate what I discovered about its engineering into a guitar amp. It's all very, very tied together. Now I like that part. And I think that the history is tied together. What we do now to what you're showing us here, Mark, is all very tied together. It's all
sure.
Intertwined.
Yep.
So, thanks for doing this. I appreciate everybody at PRS, everybody on the marketing team is a part of this. You and I doing this together, Mark, is really easy because there's so much history here. And thanks for letting me tell the stories. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. That was fun. We'll do it again.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.